Coming soon to Shadowlands, Torghast is a new feature that is going to destroy WoW as we know it. No, I don't like that. Today, we're going to talk about Torghast, the biggest feature coming to WoW since Warfront and Island. That's not gonna do either, no. Torghast is a new feature coming to World of Warcraft Shadowlands, and without a doubt in my mind, it's going to shake WoW's foundations. It's going to redefine the meaning of Endgame and excite, or maybe enrage, millions of players. And I'm going to explain how in today's video. Alright, you might be thinking, okay Saul, how do you know this? Did you seduce a dev with those alluring eyes and the sultry voice, and get some hands-on gameplay of the final version of Torghast ahead of everyone? No. But there's a lot that we already know that I'm going to share with you today. You're going to learn what Torghast is all about, and then we're going to speculate on how it's going to interact with our WoW routine, and maybe share a few ideas and concerns about the system. But Soul, it's not even testable yet. Wait until the alpha, wait until the beta, wait until it's live. And that is the point of me doing this now. Historically, providing feedback to Blizzard on features during alphas and betas are oftentimes too late, so it can't hurt to start now. So what is Torghast? We're going to tap into Paul Cubitt, senior game designer who is not in Hazacostas, to tell you in this supercut. Here goes.
You guys, I'm super excited to talk about this next feature. We're going to talk about Torghast, the new dungeon experience, which is coming to World of Warcraft. This is the center of the mod. This is where the jailer himself is, as well as his most elite lieutenants, his most prized possessions, his prized prisoners. It's also a strange place, a confusing place, a place unlike we've never seen before in World of Warcraft. It's a scalable dungeon from 1 to 5 players. That means you can go in solo, you can go in with a group of 5 players, you bring a tank and a healer, or maybe just 5 DPS, and it should always just work out. That wasn't a joke, it actually does. As you climb the tower, your enemies will get significantly stronger. Terrifyingly so, it's actually like a lot stronger. But you're gonna grow in power too, with temporary powers per run that you get as you climb the tower. Of course, as you climb as well, the tower is gonna increase in complexity. The first couple floors might be your standard dungeon crawl where you kill creatures, explore hallways, try to find the stairs to the next level. Higher up, you'll be dealing with traps, puzzles, locked doors, more dangerous minions of the jailer, and so on. This is not our first time here in the tower. I distinctly remember last time when Brian and I came, there was this hallway which curved off to the left, and there was this caster defending it. This time, there's a hallway curving to the right, and there's this melee guy in the way. Okay, this is maybe a simplified example of the fact that the tower is always changing. The layouts are variable. They're built for exploration. You're not going to know where you're going anytime you enter Torghast. You need to explore and find the way. And because of this, by and large, this is not a timed mode. This is not Mythic Plus, right? It's a different thing. The goal here is to be thorough. Always be exploring. Try to get as much power as you can before you ascend to that next floor where the enemies are going to be that much more deadly. And that power comes in the form of something called anima. So anima is this magical soul stuff that pervades the Shadowlands. Here, I can make a choice when I get some anima. There's a fairly straightforward choice. Do I want some additional maximum health or some additional mastery? Of course, having fun is only half of it. The other half is what do I get out of it? And the answer shortly is legendaries. But most importantly, when you're making these legendaries, it'll be with a great amount of determinism. You can choose what slot you're making them for, what powers go on them, maybe even what secondary stat distributions you have on them.
Okay, cool. Torghast is really nothing like we've ever seen in WoW before, but it's also the product of previous features seen in some of WoW's more recent expansions. Many of you might be familiar with the Withered Training World Quest, or the Deaths of Chromie, and most recently, Horrific Visions, which I'm going to refer to a lot throughout this video essay because this is pretty fresh in our minds. With Shadowlands, Blizzard is going to take what they've learned, add a bunch of new tech like randomized layouts per visit, temporary anima bonuses to discover, and crafting. Torghast isn't just a patch gimmick, but a full-on feature that will be supported throughout all of Shadowlands. Unless it bombs, then it's gonna be, awkward. Torghast aims to be an endless, repeatable dungeon designed to provide challenge, prestige, and loot, and is loosely described as a rogue-like experience. Not a roguelite experience, a roguelite. But what is a roguelite? To explain this further, we go all the way back to a game called Rogue. a 1980s dungeon crawler where the player fights off monsters and collects items to help them eventually reach the end. Here's the twist though, if you died, that's it. Permadeath. No checkpoints, no save scumming, no extra lives. You're back at the title screen to make a new character and try again after taking another shot at tequila. Only in your next playthrough, the dungeon is totally different, from layout to monster and item placement. It's not the tequila though, it's the game. No run is ever the same. And so was born the genre of roguelike RPG. These are just games that were based on the original game, Rogue. The roguelike has a few defining characteristics: permadeath, randomly generated levels, and randomly placed everything else. Monsters, traps, bonuses, etc. The draw was that while the goal of the game was always the same, the experience is unique each time, and it gave it a sense of built-in replayability even if you beat the game. Since then, numerous roguelikes were released, but it wasn't until after the year 2000 or so when the genre was reimagined. I'm going to briefly feature a game that I've been playing since it hit early access called Hades. Without going into too much detail, you're trying to escape hell, and to do so, you're going to fight through hordes of baddies across randomly generated rooms using helpful bonuses along the way until your unceremonious death. Unlike the old generation of roguelikes though, this game doesn't end with death. In fact, dying is part of how the game operates. I mean, sure, when you die, you lose all of your level progression and you have to start at the very beginning. In this case, it's the deepest part of hell. However, you get to keep certain currencies that you've earned that you then get to spend on a development tree. Even keep special items that were found after completing milestones, and this will follow you on subsequent runs. Death is inevitable, but so is success. So to add to it, additional options are available for those who want an even greater challenge. Hence, this new genre has been dubbed Rogue Lite, for its more forgiving nature and having an actual gameplay loop. Combining difficult gameplay, gradual character growth, randomly generated dungeons, and a theme that cleverly explains why dying isn't actually a big deal, and you have an arguably fun experience for those players who aren't afraid of dying or repeated experimentation. Which brings us back to WoW and its attempts to bring the roguelite experience, because Torghast is not really its first attempt. Starting with the Withered training scenario, players started with a handful of lowly soldiers, but over the course of many runs, rose a powerful army of mindless addicts. Really ethical, yeah. In the Deaths of Chromie scenario, you needed to save Chromie before time ran out. A helpful talent tree made the experience more efficient and you more powerful. Horrific Visions are its most complete version yet. They're a difficult experience that grew easier with powerful rewards obtained in the instance and an upgrade tree to progress through. In roguelite-like fashion, this also countered with masks that up the difficulty for an even greater challenge for greater rewards. And then of course coming soon is Torghast, Tower of the Damned, where you, either alone or with the faceless pugs, are going to climb the tower of the mysterious jailer and venture as far as you can until your brutal death. We know you'll be able to obtain runes to craft legendaries, but more could be added before long, including maybe a research tree and maybe direct gear progression as you climb. Does Torghast follow the roguelite formula? It seems so. Randomly generated levels, difficult and unpredictable combat, and a minimal narrative to explain the endless cycle of death, like Shadowlands, right? Okay, good enough. But even if Torghast has all the trappings of a bona fide roguelite, it's not a standalone game. It's still just a feature built into an MMORPG. Final Fantasy XIV's Palace of the Dead is a roguelite feature that was introduced into the game a number of years ago. Unlike what we're likely to see in WoW, the Palace of the Dead is a mostly closed experience, where players jump in and all of a sudden, they start at level 1. They progress as far as they can and leave with gear rewards that were considered powerful for its time, but today are more like cosmetic rewards. They also earn currencies and experience. One big plus about the Palace is that it can be repeatedly run with no penalty. With Torghast, well, we'll get to speculating that in a moment. Torghast will have a direct relationship with the game outside of it, making it more like a roguelite lite? Since Torghast will be a source of player power, and you can gear from outside of Torghast, that's going to mean dealing with the ugliness of balance and pacing. Oh boy. So how often will we run it? One of the early questions asked with regards to Torghast is, how often will we be able to run it? It's hard to make a blind guess. After all, using Battle for Azeroth as the most recent example, its major features included Island Adventures, which could be spammed, and Warfronts, which had a few days of uptime and a few more days of downtime. Let's also look at WoW's previous roguelite offerings. Wither Training came in the form of a world quest, meaning you can only run it once every few days, aka time gating. The Deaths of Chromie scenario could be spammed, but upgrades from the tree took days to research, aka time gating. Horrific Visions can be run 2, maybe 3 times a week, but requires you to put in some work for each and every entry, aka grinding and time gating. Since the premise of Horrific Visions shares some similarities to what Torghast has to offer, players have rightfully voiced concerns that Torghast will severely limit the opportunities that they'll have to go in for a romp. Think back to other roguelites that I mentioned, Hades and Palace of the Dead. Even after defeat, players can jump right back in, and in these kinds of games they often do, maybe because the RNG screwed them over and maybe next time they'll do better. In an interview with Millennium, game director Ian Hazzikostas somewhat addressed this issue. He says, with regard to Horrific Visions, there are definitely some elements that have parallels with Torghast, but Horrific Visions aren't designed to be the same sort of roguelite or having a dynamic experience. It's more of a predictable challenge that players will go into multiple times and master over the course of that trip. Something more similar to, let's say, Wither Training in Suramar, except with much more complexity and layers of progression to it. Not really a fact, but more of an observation. The main reason why Horrific Visions can't be spammed repeatedly, despite the reward system, which I think is pretty elegant, is because there are only 2 maps, Orgrimmar and Stormwind. I mean, sure, there are affixes that rotate each week, but being able to hop in as much as you want, whenever you want, for basically practice runs, makes these Horrific Visions a lot less horrific. Nothing in Blizzard's initial Shadowlands announcement indicates that straight up gear is going to drop from Torghast, only that these runes are going to drop that will be used for legendary crafting. With that in mind, inspired by Horrific Visions, we can speculate how the rewards and loops for Torghast can or should work. We'll keep it really simple for the sake of argument, and to be very clear, this is very speculative. It's design fanfiction, this is headcanon, so feel free to bash it all you want, it's okay. I can imagine a system where crafting a legendary could take anywhere from days to weeks to craft. Being able to customize the slot, the bonus, and the secondaries on a legendary piece of gear is bound to be very expensive. Meanwhile, making a so-called lesser legendary, if that's going to be a thing, on like a random slot with a random bonus might take less time to craft. The primary resource for crafting these items are runes, as mentioned in Blizzard's announcement. So let's pretend that clearing floor 1 of Torghast will get you 1 rune. Cool. Clearing floor 2, which is tougher than floor 1 logically, will get you 2 runes. Also cool. Basically, the higher number floor that you clear, the more runes that you get. The more runes that you get, the sooner that you can craft badass legendaries, or at least maybe the more access you get to more expensive and potent legendary traits. Greater accomplishment equates to greater reward, something like that. Now let's say that on floor 10, you die. Game over. You get a Spartan kicked from the tower. Boo. It kind of sucks, but okay. So you jump back in right away and you start from scratch. You complete floor 1 again and you get 0 runes. So what's up with that? You already cleared a floor and received a reward for that week. So you're basically going to be loot locked from that floor. It's the same premise as raid and dungeon bosses. It's the same as Horrific Visions. You only get the reward once per reset. We're all familiar with this. Of course, that means if you do clear floor 10 this time, you now get your reward of runes and you can take on floor 11. Under this premise is a compromise that respects the desire to push, rewarding skill and perseverance, and balancing self-control. If the reward system is based on this basic framework, In theory, you can jump into Torghast until your face turns blue. I mean, after all, Torghast is random. No run is the same, just do it for fun. You might wipe on floor 2 because your first few anima selections were total rubbish. RNG is your best friend and your worst enemy in a roguelite. This RNG allows the design of Torghast to allow unlimited chances at getting loot, but limit that success to a certain degree. Because balance is important too, right? No one wants to see a situation where a small group of the server's best spams this Torghast thing and maxes out all the rewards in a single weekend. But how do we design the system to also be merciful for new players, returning players, or alts? Because no one wants to fall hopelessly behind either, and we're going to assume that these legendaries that you can craft will not be bind on equip. I admit that I'm having a hard time with this one, and I'm sure that we can get into a long and very toxic debate over catch-up mechanisms and alt friendliness and stuff. I know it's kind of a cop-out, and I invite you to share your thoughts on this in a comment below, but for now, we're just gonna move on. Horrific Visions and Torghast represent something new and controversial to the world of Warcraft, and that is another possible route, this time solo, through Endgame. Today's WoW features a handful of endgame activities, PvP, raids, and dungeons, that loop into max level world content. Horrific Visions are the first opportunity players have had to obtain very high level gear solo, although it's designed to be very difficult. An unfortunate tendency among the vocal WoW community is to both love and hate new things. Everyone likes new and interesting things to do, but everyone also hates feeling compelled or forced to do things that in the past they didn't do. It boils down to one of the greater critiques in the Battle for Azeroth expansion, that there are so many different activities to do that contribute to your max level character that many players feel overwhelmed by the sense that they've got to knock everything out before the new week rolls around. Tell people there's an activity that gives out gear with orange text, and most people in WoW are gonna grit their teeth and do it. As a person who enjoys solo challenges, I really liked the Mage Tower. I like Horrific Visions, and I'm confident that I'm going to like Torghast, but not everyone feels the same way about this roguelite formula, and this formula is going to permeate an entire expansion. I can relate to that dreadful feeling. I'm not fond of Island Expeditions. I'm not fond of Mythic Plus. These activities permeated Battle for Azeroth and today's WoW culture. But what makes Torghast so controversial is that it offers something unique that won't be offered in the next raid tier or a weekly chest. I don't mean to stoke fears of something new or that we should be so averse to change, but we're going to hear this fear and aversion from a vocal minority, and they're going to be pretty loud. And there's also what a feature like Torghast suggests: soloable content. If Torghast really takes off, and there really is a platform of competitive single-player content, what will this do to the WoW culture? It's certainly possible that we can see a Torghast leaderboard based on every specialization to see how far someone can get on their own, along with a leaderboard, for teams of 2 to 5, of course. Despite my own dislike of Mythic Plus, I think it's a very healthy addition to WoW that ignited the endgame passions of players who previously had no recourse. Torghast might bring in something new too, to further ignite the passions of others who are looking for a new itch. Is Torghast just an expansion feature to be discarded, or is it the blueprint of real endgame single-player content? And are people ready for it? And finally, what will Torghast's success do to endgame as we know it? We'll have a fourth pillar of endgame content, which already includes PvP, dungeons, and raids. WoW also adopts a philosophy of allowing the overlap of items. Historically, powerful PvE trinkets have kind of dominated PvP, and raiders are often decked out in Mythic Plus gear, which is arguably the most reliable source of powerful, if not optimized gear. Where will single-player content stand against this? There is a ton to think about and speculate and debate over, but we're going to stop here and wait until we really get our teeth into Torghast. To wrap things up, I am really excited to try this out. If we can repeat it as much as we want with loot locking rules to balance things out, I think I'm gonna find myself stuck there in my free time just to see how far I can get, or check out some of the anima bonuses so we can experiment with what synergies work best. In fact, I would suggest that during the alpha and beta for Shadowlands, Blizzard should make Torghast available as soon as they can on a standalone server that is just designed to test that feature and that feature alone, because that's going to need a lot of fine tuning to make it fun, balanced, and challenging. But that's going to be it from me, so thanks so much for listening to me today. I know it's a little bit weird for me to talk so much about a feature that we know so little about, so I kind of said a lot of nothing, but well, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in a comment below, whether you're excited or horrified of this thing that's coming to Shadowlands. Please don't forget to hit that like button over there, and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you later. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.